Now we want to look at how trade affects the welfare of the market.
Yeah,
Right.
David,
Yes, Seth.
you got a little something there.
Oh man, isn't that embarrassing? Oh, that's embarrassing, but it is delicious at the same time. Excuse me. I apologize. Got a little out of control there with the pie, I guess. All right. So now we want to see, I apologize. We want to see how trade affects the welfare of the market. This is going to be another way for us to show you why economists like trade. It's going to increase the overall welfare in this market. So here, let's go from a closed economy to an open economy. Closed economy just means we're not allowing for trade. Open economy means we do allow for trade. So taking a look here, before we open up the economy, what is our consumer surplus? It's area A plus B, everywhere below the demand curve, above or equal to the price. What is our producer surplus? It's just area C, everywhere below the price, above or equal to the supply curve or our cost to produce. Now we're going to open up the economy. This is going to be an instance where we have the comparative advantage. How do I know that we have the comparative advantage of producing here? Because our price is going to be lower than the price after trade, or what we call the world price. The price other countries have to charge for the product based on their cost of production. So here we're going to have the comparative advantage. Our domestic price is going to be lower than the price after trade, or the world price. Now, as we open up to the rest of the world, we're going to be able to raise our price up to that world competitive level. So what is that going to do to our overall surpluses? So here we're going to see that overall surplus is going to increase. It's going to all go to the producer, though, at the expense of the consumer. So now what we're going to see for the consumer, they're going to go from area A, B before trade to just area A now after trade, below the demand curve, above or equal to that relevant price. We're going to see here for our producer, their surplus is going to increase from just area C to B, D, and C. Now, in a closed economy, the seller here would be reticent to raise that price because you see, we move along that demand curve to the left. As we raise the price, less people are going to want to buy the product. So supply would increase, demand would decrease. In a closed economy, we would end up with a surplus. But now it's no longer a surplus. We're able to sell the rest of that surplus to the rest of the world. And so here, the producer likes this. They get to charge higher prices and they get to sell more. The difference here between our domestic supply and our domestic demand, it's the amount that we're exporting to other countries. So the producer just goes from area C to area B, C, and D. Overall, the market is better off by area D. We have more surplus. But again, in this instance, when we have the comparative advantage, it comes at the expense of our consumers. We can turn it around. What if we open up the economy and other countries have the comparative advantage? Well, we're going to have to lower our price down to that world price of trade, that competitive world price of trade. We're going to have to lower that price down to the price after trade here in the graph. So before trade, what is our consumer surplus? Area A, below the demand curve, above or equal to the price. What is our producer surplus? Area BC, below our price, above or equal to our cost to produce, or our supply curve. Once we open up to trade, we see that lower world price, that lower price after trade. So now what happens to our producer surplus? It's going to shrink down to area C. Our consumer surplus is going to grow up to A, B, and D. Overall, we're better off by that area D. Now, if this was a closed economy at this lower price, what we would have is a shortage. As prices come down, our domestic demand increases, our domestic supply decreases. But now that's no longer a shortage. We're able to fill that shortage by importing from the rest of the world. The difference between our domestic demand and the domestic supply, that is the quantity that we're going to import. So here, overall, we're better off, but it comes at the expense of our producers. Our producers are not going to like that. So our producers are going to start to complain about that. They're going to go to the policymakers and they're going to say, hey, you're allowing all this trade and it's killing me here. I can't compete with these prices out there on the world market. You have to help me. What is one way that our policymakers try to protect our domestic producers? Well, through tariffs. A tariff is a tax on an imported good. So who pays a tariff? It's the country implementing the tariff. If the United States puts tariffs on another country's products, it's U.S. consumers that pay that tariff. It's a way to protect the domestic producers. You can show it's mathematically equivalent to putting a tax on your consumers to give your producers a subsidy. That is basically what's going on with a tariff to protect our domestic producers. So now we want to see how that tariff affects the welfare of the market, how it affects our overall surpluses. So here, we're going to start with an instance where it's an open economy, we're already trading, and another country has the comparative advantage. We're going to start at the lower world price of trade, the price before the tariff. So with trade and no tariff, what is our consumer surplus? Well, it's going to be the whole big area, A, B, C, D, E, and F. All right, I know my alphabet. So A, B, C, D, E, and F here. It's that whole area below the demand curve, above or equal to that price. That's going to be our consumer surplus. The producer surplus is just area G here. Now they're going to convince our policymakers, hey, you got to help me out here, compete with these low world prices, put a tariff in place on imported goods. And our policymakers are going to listen. The size of the tariff is the difference vertically between the price after the tariff and the price before the tariff. So it's $1 per unit tax, say, or $1 per unit tariff. The difference between those two prices is $1. How does this affect the welfare of the market? Well, as that price goes up, it's going to help the producer. It's going to hurt the consumer. The consumer is going to go from a consumer surplus of A, B, C, D, E, and F to now just A and B. Everywhere below the demand curve, above or equal to that relevant price, the price after the tariff. What do we see for the producer? This is going to help the producer. That was the whole point. Okay, so the producer is going to go from area G to area G plus area C, everywhere below the price after the tariff, above or equal to the cost to produce or the supply curve. What are we going to lose in the form of surplus? Well, it's going to be all this area D, E, and F. That is lost in the form of surplus. But we are going to get some of it back. Not all of that is our deadweight loss or the cost of the tariff. We're going to get some tariff revenue. The tariff revenue here is going to be the area of this rectangle E. So it's going to be the size of the tariff times the number of units being imported. We see as that price goes up, we move along that supply and demand curve. We go from Q1S and Q1D to Q2S and Q2D. So the difference between that higher price, the difference between the domestic demand and the domestic supply, that shortage is now being filled by importing from the rest of the world. So as the price goes up, the amount we import goes down. That's us protecting our domestic producer. So here our tariff revenue is going to be the size of our tariff times the number of units we're importing. So that area E, that rectangle right there, that is our tariff revenue. What is the deadweight loss of this tariff? It's going to be area D plus area F. Those two little triangles on the side. That is the surplus that we're going to lose that we're not going to get back in the form of tariff revenue. So here we're protecting our domestic producers at the expense of our domestic consumers, and there's going to be a cost in the form of deadweight loss here. Area D and area F.